You guys are all mic'd up, are you?
We
Yes,
are.
we are.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yeah.
5.
1, 2, 3.
Can you hear flying back there?
Can you hear us okay?
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Paul and Lane Cutright. Yeah. Now, go ahead.
Go ahead. Thank you.
I've had a number of discussions with Paul in particular about relationship counseling, and how many of you, by the way, are into relationship counseling as part of your practice? You know, the conventional way to do that, and I'm going to oversimplify here, and I hope you'll forgive me for that, is before these newer techniques, is to have people come in and have discussions and have insights and understandings, and then have some kind of compromise. Now, I did it just about right, didn't I? Something like that? Okay. Unfortunately, when we have all these little complaints about one another, these are all tappable issues, but if you're not going to tap on them, they remain issues. And so then you've got to compromise, you've got to use willpower and a bunch of other stuff that tends not to work very well. Fortunately, now we can, and this is what Paul and Lane do, they will take these issues, if you will, and make real headway with them, so that the compromise that eventually has to happen is much less. Did I say it right?
Yes, you did.
And it's easier and faster to find a path that works for both of them,
Yes.
because they're not triggered.
Yes. And what I want to say is before I give the microphones and the floor to them, is I have a 5-word way to have all romantic relationships work beautifully for all time. So we don't even really need this presentation. Okay? Are you ready for this? You know, write this down. You gotta keep mama happy. Now, ladies, is that true? Okay. Guys, is it true?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Here's Paul and Lane. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary.
If mom ain't happy, ain't nobody happy.
Paul and I have been relationship educators for 25 years. And as long as we've been romantic partners, we've been creative partners doing relationship education. And we want to share with you a little bit about how we got into this work.
We met 25 years ago in San Francisco in a personal development, spiritual growth center near Golden Gate Park. And I was recently separated from my second wife. I was 29 years old, and I had decided that I didn't know how to do relationships, and I probably was never going to know how to do relationships, so I had just pretty much resigned myself to that. Met Lane. We were both working in this center, and we became friends. And then one day something happened.
A big something happened.
It was really a big something that neither one of us had ever experienced before. And Lane was in the dining room. This was a large 4-story Victorian home. And there was a large oak table, and there were a group of people preparing the calendar mailing for the month. And Lane was there doing the mailing. It was an assembly line kind of thing. And I walked into the room, and our eyes locked, and we were both instantly transported out of time and space. It was almost like a Disney moment. Everything went fuzzy around the edges of our peripheral vision. It was kind of pink. And it was a timeless moment. And then it stopped as suddenly as it began. Everybody else in the room noticed, including her mother. And I went over and sat next to her and said, "Did you notice that?
What was that?
What was that? What was that?" And so we left the room for a moment to talk about that, and she wanted to make sure I was very clear this didn't mean anything. So don't get excited about this.
The thing that was so extraordinary about that moment, it was like instantly experiencing unconditional love with another human being, and a soul recognition that was extremely profound. And it was the kind of connection that I'd always wanted to have with a man and had never experienced. And to experience it just like that for a brief period of time, and then to be dropped back into normal conscious awareness was a catalytic experience for me. And as we slowly began to explore what that was, a quest ignited between the two of us. We very quickly fell in love again with one another, and our life became about learning how to keep the love alive in relationships. The experience of connection was so exquisite that we wanted to see how we could sustain that and not lose it. Our experience of relationships previous to that had been extremely painful. The modeling that I had received, the kinds of relationships that I had witnessed were very dysfunctional. My mother had been married and divorced 5 times by the time I was 20. My experience of men was that they were not trustworthy, that they came in, they used you, and then they threw you aside. And so we realized that we both had a lot to learn about how to keep the love alive. And we became passionately committed to exploring the answer to that. And we have found not one but many answers to how to keep the love alive in personal relationships, but also how to keep affinity constant and growing in professional partnerships. One of the great sorrows for me as I look into the world is seeing people experience love and affinity, and then something weird happens and they don't like one another anymore, or they even hate one another. They go to love to hate. I don't like that. And I don't think it has to be that way. And so part of our work is about educating people about how to understand the mystery of that, because it doesn't have to be that way.
So we thought of our relationship in this project, if you will, as an experiment, because we didn't know how. Neither one of us had seen successful, lasting relationships. I sort of thought I had seen that growing up, but because I was my parents' love child. They loved each other, and they wanted me. And I came to both of them late in life. And I thought that we had, and at one level we did. We had a great family. But when I left home, after my second year in college and I joined the Navy, while I was at sea, I got a letter from my parents telling me that they were divorcing each other. Well, it completely shattered my illusion about what I thought their relationship was about. And later my father told me that he stayed with my mother for me. So that was a challenging thing for me to deal with. So as far as creating a relationship in which the love continued to grow and deepen, the respect for one another continued to grow and deepen, was a complete mystery to us. Now, we were very fortunate in that we, as a part of this personal development center that we were connected with, there was a woman there who had just written a book about relationships and developed a training that suddenly became nationally successful. We had been participating in this training, and she needed trainers. We knew more about the training than anybody else, so all of a sudden we were, in our relationship, conducting trainings all over the U.S. from Hawaii to New York while we were creating and working out our own relationship. So we were very fortunate to have landed in an environment that was rich in relationship conversation and practices. We're still experimenting. Every day is new territory for us because neither one of us have ever been in a relationship this long before. And our intention is to still keep the love alive. And we practice what we're going to talk to you about today. We practice energy psychology in our relationship with each other. We do EFT with ourselves and with each other. We were looking for something besides just empty theory, besides just an academic understanding. We were looking to create a relationship of practice.
In our work with people, we use energy psychology, we use tapping to resolve emotional issues that especially make it difficult for people to maintain a heart connection. But also a lot of our work is about educating people, teaching them new skills. So we use energy psychology to resolve emotions and to change belief structures, limiting belief structures, and it makes it easier for us to teach them new moves, to make new choices. Because many of you recognize already that there are patterns, negative patterns that show up in our relationships over and over and over again, and we get stuck in those patterns. And what we've discovered is it's not enough just to neutralize the emotion that keeps us in those patterns. We have to find a new move to make. We have to make a new choice. So our work is very much about releasing emotions and skill development.
One of the distinctions that we have about learning and practice is that there's a difference between knowing about something and knowing something. And it's easy sometimes to listen to someone talk, or even listen to yourself talk about the things that you know about and think that you or they know those things. But have you ever had the experience of being in a relationship situation in which your emotions get triggered powerfully and you react either with anger or sadness or something overtakes you, and then afterwards you go, why did I do that? I know better than that. Has anybody ever done that? Of course, we're all human here. That's what we know about. What we know lives in our body, and it is how we behave when we're under stress, when we're challenged, because we will revert in that emotional survival state to what our body knows. And it takes over our cognitive process and we just react. One of the tremendous things about energy psychology in this work is that it can really shorten the learning process, the lag time between what we know about and what we know, so that we're more able to act, to respond, rather than react, out of newly embodied knowledge based on practice and a shift in the causal energy level, if that makes sense to you. Does that make sense, what I just said? Good.
When we work with people in relationships, we work with individuals who have relationship concerns. We work with pairs. We work with romantic couples. We work with business partners. We work with families, roommates. We define partnership as when there are two or more people that intend to create a future together. How many of you have people in your life that you intend to create a future with? Most of us have people in our life that we want to create a future together. And we bump into our relationship problems along the way of doing that. So in order to set the context for the work that we're going to do with you, we want to share one of the most important pieces of information that we've learned. And it has to do with the 5 stages. Shall we go into that piece now?
Sure.
Okay. There are 5 stages in partnership that any partnership will go through, whether it's a personal partnership or a professional partnership.
You have a new handout that was on your table this morning that we passed around to you.
It's different from the one. One of the challenges for us in creating a presentation for you is that in the development of our body of knowledge over the past 25 years, we have distinguished 10 creative laws for consciously creating your partnerships the way you want them. And we developed a 70-hour curriculum. And we have, in the last 10 years, condensed that into a home study course, which is 200 pages. So it wasn't appropriate for us to give that much information to Gary, but that level of knowledge is what informs our thinking about relationships and allows us to see the distinctions that take people from where they are in their relationships to where they want to be. And the 5 stages is like the overview of that. So as I was saying, there are 5 predictable stages that any partnership will go through. Attraction, power struggle, cooperation, synergy, and completion. Everything that begins has an ending. So every partnership you ever get into is going to complete in some way. The 2 stages that we see give people the most trouble are the power struggle stage and the completion stage. So we're going to be focusing most of our attention on those problematic areas this morning.
And what you'll see as you look through the notes is that for each stage there are a set of skills. And these are overlapping skills. But you know, relationships for most people appear as an enduring mystery. And people go into relationships with their fingers crossed, hoping that it'll work out, wishing that it'll turn out somehow, and they look for signs that maybe this is the one in a romantic relationship. And one of the signs that people commonly look for this being the one, is that it will always feel good, that we won't have any upsets, that we won't have any arguments or disagreements. And as soon as that starts to happen, then the internal private conversation arises, oh, maybe this isn't the one. Maybe I've made a mistake again. Any of you ever had those thoughts? What's important to know about these 5 stages is that the second stage of power struggle is inevitable. It's predictable. It's unavoidable. It's going to happen, and it doesn't mean what we probably think that it means. It doesn't mean the beginning of the end. See, our view about relationships, and partnerships in particular, is that they are for our learning and for our spiritual and personal evolution.
In fact, that's one of the first shifts that we make when people come to us for relationship coaching. We help expand their idea of what relationships are for. Most people automatically come from the point of view that, well, I have relationships so that I can get my needs met. You know, I'm going to get into a relationship with you because you're going to make me feel lovable, or you're going to make me feel desirable, or you're going to protect me. And what we help people understand is that our relationships are not simply to get our needs met. Our relationships are for learning. That our relationships reflect to us what it is we need to learn. Our relationships reflect to us the opportunity for our own personal spiritual evolution. And when you look at them from that point of view, a lot of times things that looked like failures become successes. Sometimes what you're in a relationship to learn how to do is to learn how to not allow certain behaviors. Sometimes we're in a relationship to learn how to leave without hating someone. But if people think that a successful relationship is a relationship that lasts forever and the relationship completes, oftentimes they say the relationship is a failure. So we help expand their idea of what success is.
Because it's in our relationships, especially our closest relationships, our partnerships, that our deepest feelings arise. Our deepest feelings of love and connection and affinity and compassion and safety and all of those feelings on the positive end of the spectrum, as well as all of our feelings of anger and betrayal and misunderstanding, sadness and grief and hurt. All of those happen in our relationships with each other. Learning how to fully engage all of ourselves in our relationships, in our partnerships, and to be an invitation for others who are in relationship with us to be the same represents, in our view, one of the most potent spiritual paths available to us. And most of the learning, healing, growing, expanding evolutionary opportunities appear in the power struggle stage, because that's where we're the most challenged. So Hope, luck, and crossed fingers will not get us through the power struggle stage. It requires skill. So typically in our culture, when people are having problems in their relationships, they will tend to think there's something wrong with them, or there's something wrong with their partner, or both of you. And the solution is to go to a therapist or an astrologer or whoever their helper of choice is to get the problem fixed. Our view is not that there is a problem, but that there is knowledge that is unavailable and skills that are not possessed. But that with knowledge and with skill, we can all learn how to navigate the power struggle stages in our partnerships to arrive at a deeper level of cooperation, moving into synergy, and that creates a powerful energy field within the relationship, within the partnership, that radiates out and touches anyone who comes into contact with you. And that, in fact, this issue of power struggle and cooperation in our relationships is the green, growing, evolutionary edge of life on this planet now. Because if, as a species, we don't learn how to do this, we're in big trouble. Globally, in our relationship with nature, in our relationship with other cultures and with other nations, and politically and economically and socially. And all of those world problems can seem so overwhelming. Like, what can I do? Well, there's one place every single one of us can make a difference. And that is in our own personal relationships. Because that's where we live. And our relationships are the fabric of the life that we live.
Long story short about the 5 stages, when you meet someone and you're in the attraction stage, you're exploring positive possibilities. Usually people are putting their best foot forward. As the relationship deepens, as there's a deeper level of trust that's required, you're going to invest money, you're going to invest time, you're going to invest emotional energy. Very quickly, you move into the power struggle stage. And the power struggle stage is really about developing trust. Only most people don't recognize that that's what it's about. Because what it looks like is there are upsets. It looks like there are disagreements. It looks like things are getting tense. They didn't used to be tense, but they're tense now. One of the biggest clues that you've entered into power struggle is when you start having judgments. In the attraction stage, you're very enamored of the person, and they're enamored of you. If the relationship progresses, then you start kind of backing up and saying, how is this person going to let me down the way I've been let down before? Are they going to leave me the way I've been left before? Are they going to try and control me if I let my guard down? Are they going to abuse me or say bad things to me? And what happens is our unresolved past jumps in to our current relationship. And we start seeing through unresolved filters. And our triggers start happening. If, for example, my relationship with Paul in the beginning is about me resolving my unresolved relationship with my father who abandoned me. And we've been having a great time in the attraction stage. And I'm starting to feel really in love with him. And we're talking about like moving in together, setting up housekeeping together. And I can start to feel the part of me that wants it a lot and is also really afraid of it. What I'll start to do is I'll be critical in my looking for him. I'm looking for the flaws. I'm looking to see how he might hurt me the way I've been hurt before. And I may start to see things that aren't there. That's one of the things that's so strange about working with people in relationship is their perceptions can be false while they think that they're seeing clearly. So he could be the most trustworthy man in the world, but I'll start seeing through my filter my belief that men aren't trustworthy. If I start to act like he's not trustworthy, the emotional energy that I send to him is one of defensiveness that is always perceived as attack over there. You know, there's a voice tone where I tend to be a little critical. I'm not as generous in my love with him. So he goes, oh, you know, we've been having a great relationship, and all of a sudden he's wondering, well, what happened with her? You know, she's kind of closed down and weird. You know, and her ears are kind of shooting lasers her eyes are shooting lasers at me every once in a while. What's that about? So then he gets defensive and he closes down. So what's happened...
And it was only a matter of time. I knew it was coming.
So when we get into the power struggle stage, whether it's personal or professional, our triggers start happening and we stop seeing what's real. We start believing our hallucinations. So when we work with partnerships, one of the first things we want to do is we want to do trigger work with them. We want to find out what are the things that happen in the relationship that cause you to feel upset, that cause you to feel hurt. And usually by the time people come to us, they have a lot of relationship pain. And if we ask them to make a list of their triggers, they've really got a long one. And what we'll do is we'll use tapping to neutralize whatever that is. You know, it's like if I'd been counting on spending the weekend with him, and he decided that he was really going to have a weekend with the guys and he was going to go fishing. I could experience deep wounding about that, thinking that it was because he wanted to go fishing and being unaware that what it was triggering was my father that abandoned me and was never really there for me, and my thought that he was going to abandon me and this is just the beginning of the end. So I'd start working, somebody would start working with me about my upset about, you know, Paul's going fishing, Paul doesn't want me, Paul's going to leave me. But very quickly, the father issue that it was at the core of it would come up. Then we would tap on the abandonment issue about the father. After that's cleared, okay, I'm much more able to connect with my higher source. The channel to, you know, the telephone line to divine intelligence, there's no static on it. I can get the message, and our soul, if you will, the divine power is always sending us messages about how to create what it is we want to create, how to come from a place of love and wisdom. But when we get emotionally triggered, that telephone line has a lot of static on it, and we can't access that divine wisdom. So when we clear the perturbed emotions, then all of a sudden we're in a more resourceful state and we can go, oh, well maybe because he wanted to go fishing, it doesn't mean that he's going to abandon me like my father. Oh, maybe I don't need to close down my heart. Maybe I don't have to do all of this defensive, protective stuff. Maybe I can just let him enjoy his relationships with men and use this as an opportunity for me to experience my own individuality, which is a very healthy thing to do. But those thoughts, those choices, don't seem available to me as long as I'm triggered, because then I'm in this protective, protect me state.
One of the beauties of EFT is that in our experience, all you have to do is begin with what the person presents. I find I've been training people in EFT for a couple of years now, mostly over the telephone. But I find, and maybe those of you who have conducted EFT trainings, or maybe in your own experiences, there is a tendency often to want to make it more complicated than it really is, to look for more than is what's simply being presented. But like what Lane was saying, if you just take what is presented, in this case, that I want to go fishing, and she thinks this means this is the beginning of the end. That's the immediate thing. Clearing that will allow the next appropriate thing in the stack, if you will, to come up. And then the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one.
And it can happen very quickly. We had a couple come to work with us several months ago, and we had done some relationship education with them about five years before. And we got a phone call one evening from the woman who said, I just found out that John's having an affair, and he's with the woman now. And I just had a psychic intuition that that was what was happening, and I called him where he was, and I confronted him, and at first he denied it, and then he confessed it. And she was extremely triggered. She wanted to kill herself.
It tends to do that. Infidelity is one of the bigger triggers.
We don't think too clearly in those conditions. And she had made several phone calls where she was like threatening the woman. She'd called him and said she was going to go out to their dog's grave and shoot herself, and that's where he'd find her. And
because he was out of state.
Stuff.
He was out of state, so this was all happening by the telephone with him.
So she said, "We need to come see you. Can we come see you?" And we said, "Well, of course." So she let us know where he was. She was in Arizona. He was in California. And the next day or two, they both showed up at our front door.
They had not seen each other until they walked through our door.
So if you can imagine how intense that was. She's livid, wants to kill, feeling completely betrayed, and he is so guilty.
He's got his tail between his legs. He knows he's really fudged up bad.
And he's afraid.
Yeah.
So they walk through the front door, and in our workroom we have two couches. Paul and I sit on one side, and the pair sit on the other side. They were on opposite corners, like backed up as far as they could. And we got connected with them just a little bit, and then it was very clear that they needed to have individual work. So Paul and I trust our intuition about which part of the pair to work with. It's one of the good things about having a partner when you're working with partners. So I decided to work with the man, and he worked with the woman. And we went apart for, I guess it was just about an hour.
About an hour and 15 minutes.
And I helped him clear all of his guilt feelings, all of the emotions that he had around it, and there were so many of them. The reason that he had about how he got into this situation is that his relationship over the last few years had been one where he felt constantly criticized. He didn't feel like he got to be a strong, powerful, desirable mate. He felt more like a little boy. So the experience of self that he was having in his marriage was one of pain and lack of confidence. And he met this other woman in a work situation, and she admired him. All her attention was on his fine attributes, and the experience of self that he had with this other woman was of being a very powerful, desirable man. And he really liked that feeling. And it was so powerful for him, he wanted to have more of that feeling. So on the one hand, he felt really bad and guilty because he'd hurt his wife. And on the other hand, he'd had a taste of this delicious experience of self that he wanted to have, but he didn't think he could have with his wife anymore because it had gotten lost. So we worked on all the different kinds of issues about how guilty and wrong he was and how he deserved to be punished, and how it was bad for him to want what he wanted, and thinking that he should sacrifice his desires to help the person that he loved, and all of his fears and doubts and concerns. It only took about an hour for him to be very, very clear, to be able to accept responsibility for his own behavior, to see why he did it, to acknowledge his mistake without invalidating himself, which was really powerful. And you were working with the woman, and
who was rage-filled. And so we were working on her anger towards men. And one of the things that she got to see as we got below the anger is how she was behaving like her mother. And she got to see her part in how critical she had become, like her mother was critical of her father, how nothing that he did was good enough, how she could even see herself doing it, know that she was doing it, know that she shouldn't do it, but couldn't help herself from doing it. And she did it anyway, and knew that she was pushing him away. That's what was underneath her anger. So then she got to her feeling guilty, feeling bad that she had this pattern going on, that she was more like her mother than she thought because she thought she'd resolved this already. no. We've all heard that, right? I had handled this already. Why is this coming back? However, in the course of, and neither of these people knew about EFT, so it was just introducing them to this particular procedure. And in the space of an hour, she too got to a place where she could take responsibility for her part, to stop blaming him, to stop feeling like his victim. So then we brought them back together. This time they spontaneously sat down on the sofa next to each other.
Well, actually, there was one piece that happened. They were a little bit closer. But then there's another thing that we do with pairs when the issue is the same, the way we use tapping. If the issue is the same, a very powerful application of tapping is to have them look at the partner. So we had them tap on their fear of trusting. Okay, so that would be, so if I'm her and he's him, okay, it would look something like, well, we don't have the coach, but it's like, even though I'm afraid to trust you, I completely love and accept myself. But because we're giving them the words, they're saying it at the same time. Okay, so they're saying, as they look at one another, the very same thing. Even though I'm afraid of trusting you, I completely love and accept myself. Even though I want to trust you, but I think that would be really stupid, I love and accept myself. Even though I know there's a part of me that may want to hurt you, I love and accept myself. And we go through all those issues, and then they would tap on afraid to trust you, afraid to trust you, afraid to trust you. And then when we feel the energy is like really smoothed out, and it was after that that they were like cuddled up. They were holding hands.
They were holding hands.
This is like an hour and a half max from when they walked through the door. I call that a miracle.
So then we got to have a conversation with them in the last half hour. When we do work with partners when it's 2-on-2, it's a minimum of an hour and a half, usually 2 hours, because an hour just isn't enough. You just get started. So the last half hour, we were with them for 2 hours. The last half hour was about, do they want to proceed with the relationship? Is it worth pursuing? Has this been so damaging that they want to abandon the relationship? Or do they want to use it for their own spiritual development? Because there will be more feelings that come up. This isn't the end of it. But you have something to work with, and you have an opportunity to make some new promises and commitments to one another to go from here. And use this experience to deepen your relationship with yourself, your relationship with spirit, your relationship with each other, and to recreate your marriage. And maybe you need to make some new agreements now. And they decided that that's what they wanted to do. So they left holding hands, feeling like there was hope for their relationship. And then we did phone work with them over the next couple of months to help them through the rough spots that arose afterwards.
But the biggest thing that tapping can do is it shifts the energy dynamic. If the pairs are triggered, okay, there's an adversarial energy. I can't trust you, I need to protect myself from you. There's an energy like this. Once you release the triggers, then it's more like the problem is not there and not here. It's this other thing.
So
It's
we can
this
be
mother
allies.
issue or the father issue or the lack of skill or the things that have happened. So it shifts to we're being allies, working together to resolve this problem out here. And that's a powerful healing. So that's how they left. They came in like this, and they left arm in arm, seeing that they had the resources they needed to move forward to create a future together.
And a part of the resources that they had was Lane and myself as their coaches. So we work with people primarily in a coaching capacity, which is about creating the kind of future that they want, but inevitably in relationships, unresolved issues from the past show up. So there is a healing therapeutic aspect as well. But that's not the end of it. It's really about what kind of future do you want to have, and acquiring the skills and the knowledge to be able to create that. So we need to take a break. When we come back, what we would like to do is be a resource for you and be alive to what is wanted and needed here with you. So we can take questions from you. We can have dialogue with you. We have more stories to tell about our clients, more things that we can do, but we also want to be alive to what's wanted and needed by you, and possibly even some demonstrations.
What I would recommend that you do is go through the 5 stages, and there are skills that go with each one of those stages. And one of the ways for you to map out your own personal curriculum for relationships so that you can master the art of consciously creating your relationships the way you want them is to go through those skills and mark the skills that you see you could improve on. You can highlight them, or you can just check them and you say, yes, I could improve a little bit in learning how to admit mistakes without invalidating myself. And what that'll do is that will show you the lessons that you need to learn. And what relationships are so magical. You will attract the people that will give you the opportunity to learn that skill.
You could count on it.
But the good thing about that is that you'll know that that's what you're doing. And that's, I think, one of the greatest gifts that Paul and I have to offer people is that our relationships are for learning, but we don't know what we don't know what we're there to learn. So if you can imagine that you were just dropped into some classroom and nobody told you what the topic was, and you didn't know if you were supposed to learn how to sit still, or you were to learn how to raise your hand, or you were to learn how to decipher the words on the blackboard. Nobody told you what you were there to learn, so you didn't know what to learn. As soon as somebody tells you what you're learning is, you're going to learn how to repeat back to me the things that are on this blackboard. Then you get focused and you go, oh, okay, I can do that, and you can learn it. It's the same thing with relationships education. You can learn how to discover, what am I in this relationship to learn? And then things get very simple and clear. And you can feel very connected to your center when you know what you're there to learn. But when you're confused, and is the lesson to keep trying and to never give up? Is the lesson to walk away? Is the lesson to be unattached? Is the lesson to make clear requests? I don't know what I'm here. And so that can be very painful, that level of confusion.
And part of the problem is, by the time we're grown-ups, we think we're supposed to know how to do relationships already because we've had some.
What we'd like to do now is take questions. So if any of you have your own personal relationship issues that you want ideas on, if you want to ask questions about how to work with relationships in your own practice, whatever, come on up.
Yes.
Okay. I had stopped and asked you before, and you thought everyone could profit from this. There's a huge block in my relationship with my son. He's an adult.
Can you get closer to the mic?
He's an adult, and he lives in another state, and we periodically go through our annual review where I can't stand it anymore, and it's time that we have to address whatever's going on. This is not a need for him right now. He's stuck with some angry feelings. I have done my tapping. I have worked on forgiving myself for not being the mother he wanted me to be. I have worked on the issues that have come up in our conversation, but I'm still stuck wanting to heal what's happened in our lives, and he's not ready to move forward with that. So it's kind of a one-sided relationship, and I'd like to clean up my part of it, because in some ways I feel controlled by his not wanting to, and yet I understand he needs to have his own timing, but by the same token, my need is to feel more centered and more grounded and be okay with him having his process.
Sure. There's a few things that I could share with you that could help. The challenge of one part of the partnership wanting to work on it and the other part not being interested is a common challenge. And the difficult part is the person who's willing to work on it, maintaining a heart focus, being able to keep their heart open and to stay loving rather than to feel hurt because their overtures of healing have been rejected. Because it feels like you can only keep your heart open for so long before it really starts to hurt, and you're just going to say, well, I'm going to go over here, and when you're ready, come talk to me. Okay, so...
it helps to be in two different states.
Right, okay. So part of what you'd want to do is you'd want to deal with whatever the issues are that make it hard for you to keep your heart open, to keep loving him regardless of what his response is to you. Because what I've found is if one part of the partnership can maintain the heart connection, it builds an energetic bridge. And you are connected with your son energetically. At a soul level, you're definitely connected. And he may be having to resolve his own unresolved childhood issues. He may be blaming you. He may be punishing you. But
All of the above.
right, if you are able to stay connected to your own love, okay, you're able to love yourself, and you're able to extend love to him, it creates an energetic bridge. If you can continue to love him without getting upset or hurt or angry, you can continue to send invitations to him. You can also take responsibility for the mistakes that you've made and admit them without invalidating yourself. You can apologize, apologizing, I apologize to you for all the mistakes that I've made. I wish that I could have been a perfect mother. If you could only know how hard I tried. And yet, in many ways, I failed. And to ask for his forgiveness, not from a needy place, but from the place of strength, because you've resolved the guilt within yourself. So when you're clear emotionally and you're able to maintain that heart connection, it creates an energetic bridge that pulls him to you. It makes it so much easier for him to do his part. But if we get reactionary, if we get hurt, if we get angry, we cut the bridge, and it makes it even harder for them to come to us later. Does that make sense?
Yes, from what you're saying reminds me that I'm still waiting for him to say, I'm okay.
Yes.
It's forgiveness, but it's more than that. It's my identity as mother.
So have you tapped at all on even if he never forgives me and says I'm okay?
No, I haven't, because the clarity just came now in the moment.
Right.
So that's a good one for me to do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you were to think of the
I can't even allow that in my mind. I have to admit that. Right now, I cannot allow that possibility in my mind.
Are you
what
willing
possibility can't you allow in your mind?
That we will never come to resolution.
So here's an important distinction. You can come to resolution. You can be, in your relationship with yourself and with him, resolved, loving, self-forgiving, forgiving of him, and a space for him to come to, as Lane was describing. And that space is not complete unless it also contains the possibility that he may never do that himself.
So your
Yes.
peace is not dependent on his behavior.
Okay.
And
The kaleidoscope just shifted, All the colors and pieces are the same, but you just did a little something with that for me that helps me to see that
in fact,
that could be.
that could be the very peace required
Right.
for him to come to you.
Right.
And for you to be patient in terms of how long you think that should take.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So some inner work, tapping
Right,
about
right.
that little piece that I just said,
Little.
that big piece that I just said.
yes.
Well, it just seems
could
big,
do it right now.
It just
Yes.
seems big. Why don't we do it now?
Okay.
Why don't you come up here? And would you all be willing to surrogate tap for her?
Great.
Well, was that okay with you if they tap for you? You want to?
Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Even though I think, what's your son's name? Bob. Even though I think I need Bob to forgive me. And I'm afraid he never will. I deeply and profoundly love and accept myself. Even if Bob never resolves this with me. I can still love myself. And I'm willing to love myself. Because I know that I'm a lovable person. And I'm a mother who did the best that she could. Even if Bob never forgives me and resolves this. I completely love and accept myself. Okay? Here we go.
Where's the microphone? Where's the handheld? I'm going to...
I don't know. Okay. Okay. Bob not forgiving me. Side of your eye. Bob not getting off it.
Okay, let's hold
Under
it
your
for
eye.
just a second, just so we can get set up. It's okay if we do a little logistic thing since you're being so courageous.
A little way.
We're going to do a little logistics thing since you're being so courageous. Okay, so that they can hear you and they can see you.
There's not much coming out of the
There is.
Yeah.
There really is. So
One
I'm going
thing
to hold
that-
the microphone for you,
Okay.
okay?
And one of the things that you guys can do also to help her while she's doing this is flood her just by opening your heart, and it's just a thought, just open your heart chakra and just imagine that love is just flowing right. Is that okay? Okay. Flowing right up to Joe. Okay? Okay. Shall we resume?
Let's start with the karate chop point, huh? Start from the beginning.
Okay. Even though Bob may never forgive me,
Bob may never forgive me.
I completely love and accept myself.
I completely love and accept myself.
Even if Bob never gets off it,
Even if Bob never gets off it
and he stays stuck for the rest of his life,
and he stays stuck for the rest of his life,
I can completely love and accept myself.
I can completely love and accept myself.
Even if I think I need for him to forgive me,
There's another piece here.
What is
what is
that?
that?
Take a deep breath.
Whoa.
What's the other piece?
I had three children. My second child died at 6 months.
Take a deep breath.
And I was resolved to have the third child as a way of absolving myself from the responsibility of Mickey's death.
Is Bob your third child?
Yes.
Yes. So it was,
And I saw Bob as a gift and a confirmation.
Does it feel like losing Bob is like losing your second child all over again?
It's that, and it negates me as a human being and in my identity as a mother.
do you think it's possible to shift that at all?
I want to.
Do you? Do you want to do it now?
I'll be a basket case if I don't.
Well, you're already a baby. Yes, that's right. Is it okay with you guys if she does this now? Is it all right if I tap for you?
I guess just saying that publicly made it possible for me to break through this. So let's try.
Okay.
I'm going to attach my microphone to her because this is getting a little awkward for. So can you see? Can you take this off
Yes.
and put that on her?
Yes.
Whoa, I had no idea this was going this way.
I know.
Life is full of surprises.
Okay.
Talk about lessons.
Okay. Sometimes I find, and maybe you found this also, that it's more powerful to tap for the person so they can stay focused on the issues themselves. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. Even though I judge myself
I judge myself
for Nikki's death,
for Mickey's death.
I completely love and accept myself.
I completely love and accept myself.
And I'm willing and ready to forgive myself right now.
And I'm willing and ready to forgive myself right now.
Even though I think it means something about me that Mickey died.
Even though I think it means something about me that Mickey died.
And the situation with Bob is bringing all these old feelings up.
And the situation with Bob is bringing all these feelings up.
I completely love and accept myself.
I completely love and accept myself.
And I forgive myself.
And I forgive myself.
Even though a part of me thinks I must have done something wrong.
Even though a part of me thinks I must have done something wrong.
I'm ready to see that I didn't.
I'm ready to see that I didn't.
I did the best I could.
I did the best I could.
What happened, happened.
What happened, happened.
It's not my fault.
It's not my fault.
Because I really love and accept myself.
I don't believe that it's not my fault.
I know.
Because Mickey died of a congenital birth defect as a result of having rubella, and I contracted rubella during the first month of gestation. And I knew the child I was caring for had rubella, and I knew that it could be possible because of the choices I made that I could become pregnant at any time.
Even though I blame myself.
Even though I blame myself.
And I do think it's my fault.
And I do think it's my fault.
No, I mean, I really think it's my fault. Can you say that? No,
I really think it's my fault.
I'm willing to see that it might not be.
I'm willing to see that it might not be.
And even if it was.
And even if it was.
I deserve to be forgiven.
I deserve to be forgiven.
And I deserve to let go of this.
And I deserve to let go of this.
I deserve to be whole.
I deserve to be whole.
I deserve to love myself.
I deserve to love myself.
I'm willing to do that.
I'm willing to do that.
Because I love myself.
Because I love myself.
And the faster I can forgive myself,
The faster I can forgive myself,
the faster my other son can forgive me.
the faster my other son can forgive me.
And so when I forgive myself,
And so when I forgive myself,
I give my son a gift.
I give my son a gift.
I want to give my son a gift right away
I want to give my son a gift right away
by forgiving myself completely
by forgiving myself completely
for any way that I've ever failed my sons.
for any way that I've ever failed my sons.
Okay. All these bad feelings.
All these bad feelings.
It was my fault.
It was my fault.
It was my fault.
It was my fault.
I feel so bad that it was my fault.
I feel so bad it was my fault.
It was my fault.
It was my fault.
It was my fault.
It was my fault. Actually, I have to say, I believe that I'm sharing a soul journey with both my sons, and that I participated in their journey, and that on a soul level I agreed to all that happened, but I just don't know how to. That it's like the knowing and knowing about and the knowing.
Yes.
That's what I have to connect.
Yes.
The knowing about and the knowing.
You're doing it right now.
Okay.
All this guilt.
All this guilt.
Yes. All this guilt.
All this guilt.
Don't know if I can connect the knowing and the knowing about.
Don't know if I can connect the knowing and the knowing about.
Feeling bad about Mickey.
Feeling bad about Mickey.
Feeling bad about Bob.
Feeling bad about Bob.
Feeling bad about the whole thing.
Feeling bad about the whole thing.
Feeling guilty about the whole thing.
Feeling guilty about the whole thing.
Okay. Close your eyes. When you think about this situation with Bob and Mickey and this whole situation that you've been describing, How does it feel right now?
I feel like the knowing about and the knowing are getting closer,
Good.
but I don't quite see them together yet.
Okay, you want to get them together?
Yes.
Just a little bit more? Is that okay? Okay. Even though the knowing and the knowing about aren't quite connected yet,
Even though the knowing about and the knowing aren't quite connected yet,
I'm willing for them to be
I'm willing for them to be
any minute now.
any minute now.
Because
Like
I,
right now.
Yes. Because I deeply love and accept myself.
Because I deeply love and accept myself.
And I'm ready to be done with this.
And I'm ready to be done with this.
Okay. It's getting connected now.
It's getting connected now,
Even though I'm afraid it won't be.
even though I'm afraid it won't be.
It really is.
It really is.
Some
Yes.
more deep breaths.
Okay. Wow. Thank you all.
Yes. Want me to help you?
Thank you.
There you go.
If I was going to continue to work with you, one of the things that I would do, and I call it shadow work. It has to. One of the greatest things that we can do to clear our relationships is to confront our biggest fear about it. To like, if my fear is that I'm a bad mother, okay, just saying I'm a bad mother creates is an enormous trigger, and I can spend a lot of my energy trying to avoid seeing myself as a bad mother. I can avoid my children to avoid hearing them say that I'm a bad mother. In our relationships, we use a lot of energy to avoid seeing the thing in ourselves that we're afraid to see that always gets mirrored over there. So when you're working with people in their relationships, one of the things that you can do is have them do an exercise and have them think, what would be the worst thing that they could hear said about them if they were at a cocktail party and they were to overhear a conversation? Or if they were to wake up and there was a newspaper article written about them on the front page, and it were to say, so-and-so is a blank, blank, blank. What you have figured out there is their worst fears in their relationships, that they will appear insecure, that they will be needy, that they're an uncaring, selfish, bad person. Then what you can do is, even though I'm afraid that I am a selfish, self-centered person, I completely love and accept myself. And then you can tap on simply the statement, I am a bad person, I'm a bad person, I'm a bad mother. You neutralize the charge on their deepest, darkest judgment about themselves. It liberates so much emotional energy, which then is used to increase that connection with their spiritual self. So that then their relationships are not about reflecting to them the thing that they are afraid to see about themselves that separates them from a conscious knowing themselves as a spiritual being. Does that make sense?
Yes.
More questions?
Yes.
My wonderful wife and I have been married for about 30 years, and we're getting ready to embark on a new career and go into business.
He's a little
Hold the mic
closer.
real close.
And go into business together.
Okay.
And we haven't actually done that, but the things that each one of us do are so complementary that there may be a point where we find something, some way that it will fit where we both work together in some circumstances. And we just want to make sure that we don't, in a business relationship, doesn't muddy the waters in the other areas of our life. So.
Great.
Good thinking.
Very good. Yeah, and a good
and-
question.
And
Because it will.
Yeah, and I'll let my wife maybe add on some of her concerns too, okay?
Well, one thing I can share with you right away, and then your wife can share, is that even in a good relationship where you've gone through attraction and power struggle and you've maintained cooperation and synergy, whenever you deepen the level of commitment in a relationship, you temporarily go back to power struggle, always, because there's a deeper level of trust. It's predictable. You can count on it. Sometimes the power struggle is just a conversation that we have with ourselves in our own mind, and sometimes it's acted out. But the key is to ask the question, what do I need to trust you more in this situation? What do I need to experience trust in this situation? And for you to both answer that question and to share the answers with one another, so that when the power struggle issues come up, you know what the solution is already. So if I were to ask you, if you were to temporarily go back to power struggle and there was more trust that was needed, what would you need to experience more trust?
Well, I'm feeling like we would need to redo our original contract, because this was not part of the contract.
And how would that help you experience more trust?
Because I know what the foundation was.
Okay, so more clarity, a clearer foundation would allow you to experience more trust.
Some different agreements, perhaps, about how you would conduct your relationship.
Right. The other thing that I have found since we've started doing EFT is that there are some areas where things are going along real smoothly, and it's like there are lots of different compartments. It's not just a relationship. It's different, all kinds of different aspects. There's, financial aspect. There's
Sure.
in the bedroom aspect. There's cleaning the house and responsibilities and all of that. And some work real well, and some need a little bit more help. So it's not just a blanket relationship.
Right.
One single entity. That's
Yes.
the thing that's really come up for me.
Yes. So do you trust your ability to make requests, to be responsible for your own needs?
It's getting a lot better now. I've had to resolve a whole lot of dad issues, and
Okay.
as a matter of fact, my father came out to stay with us for about 2 months, a little over a year ago, and it was not really of my choosing. He sold his house after 50 years and was waiting to go somewhere else for the perfect time to go there. And this is when I was working on all the dad stuff, of course.
Of course.
Right.
They always show up at the
Getting
perfect
everything
time.
with real spades. And I would start getting angry at my husband. And then I would start realizing, well, it's not my husband I'm angry at all. It's something that happened way in the past that I haven't resolved. And of course, I had, both of them there right at the same time. So it was a real challenge to get through. And hopefully other people can do it where they're a little bit more separated. I really appreciate it. What was your name, Joe? Where your son is in another state. Once my dad left, it was much, much, much easier.
So one of the ways that we might use tapping in a situation like this is you would look at your partner and you would say, even though sometimes I'm afraid that you don't know what my needs are, I completely love and accept myself. Even though sometimes I'm afraid to ask you for what exactly I want, I love and accept myself. And then to do tapping on the biggest fears, fear that you'll take advantage of me, fear that your needs are going to be more important than mine, fear that I'm going to have to get sick before my needs become important enough. And you look at him while you're tapping.
That's the part that we haven't done, the face-to-face, so.
I think you'll find it to be really powerful and to really accelerate the process that you're in.
And sometimes when, it's really great when we're working with pairs who've learned, we've done enough EFT with them that they can tap themselves and they can tap one another. And it is such an incredibly loving gesture. Let's say if your fear is real and it's ignited for you, that your needs aren't going to be important enough, if he does the tapping while you're feeling, because it dispels the hallucination that you're not important. I mean, there he is loving you, tapping you. And we've experienced That is a very powerful breakthrough for couples, rather than them tapping themselves or us tapping for them, to have their partner tap for them. But there has to be enough trust in the relationship for that to happen. You can't do that too soon.
Right, that's very good. We have noticed a few times where we've tapped on each other that it's just incredibly powerful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, well, thank you very much.
Thank
You're
you
very
for your
welcome.
question.
Thank you. Let's give them a hand.